come to this happy place, welcome.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejados de
Because
las
this here's
puertas.
a wild ride in the whiskas.
When hinges creak and doors jingle.
So today on Miles from Main Street, we're doing Disney versus Universal. Who's going to win? I think we know who's going to win, but based on the podcast that you're listening to right now. But we have lots to say, and I've been to Universal recently, so I have plenty of things to say and plenty of things to tell you guys about the trip that I went on. But it's Disney versus Universal. And we'll see who we decide to go with. But like I said, I recently went to Universal. My girlfriend and I decided we wanted to go. I mean, basically because they have Harry Potter. And I've said this before, but it's like if they just had a Harry Potter, if there was a ticket to buy to go just to Harry Potter, I'd buy that 100%. Because it is kind of like its own little thing. It is technically in two different parks. So you do have to get the Universal version of a park hopper. So this Universal park hopper was around like just over $200, which is, I believe that's more expensive than a Disney park hopper.
For one day, I believe, yes.
Okay, yeah. Which is, I mean, that's crazy within itself. But that's just two parks to be able to hop from park to park. And the big reason you want that, if you are a Harry Potter fan, is you can ride the train from park to park. There's a train there that will take you from one park to the other park. And I mean, that was really cool. And honestly, talking about Universal, all of the Harry Potter stuff was really cool. The Harry Potter rides that they had there were all really great. I have to say the Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure, the roller coaster that they had there is an awesome roller coaster. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff and some really cool technology associated with that roller coaster. And I mean, I had a great time on it. I had a great time on a bunch of the other rides. In areas that I had not been before. It is kind of one thing to understand is they went for full immersion, which they were very good at. They're very good at making you feel like you're immersed in the Harry Potter world, but they went for like authentic. So a lot of the shops are tiny, like just to be in, let alone trying to stuff all of the people that are trying to get into that shop into the shop. But yeah, it was very much, I mean, and that makes a lot of sense because that's kind of how all those shops looked and felt in Harry Potter. But you do kind of have to take into account that like you're putting this into a theme park. So you're going to be trying to cram like 120 people into these small shops. So that wasn't always great. Definitely kind of felt cramped. Even when there wasn't a lot of people in the shop, it still felt cramped. So that's one thing to kind of understand with Harry Potter Land. But just honestly, the immersion within itself in that land only, really, at Universal is like next level. Really, the only area that can rival a land by Disney. So that being said, I really enjoyed that area. And I really enjoyed the Harry Potter Land stuff and everything I was able to do. We did get into the park an hour early. So we were able to do a couple things pretty easily, only about 2. And then as soon as the floodgates open, it was a Saturday, so it was a pretty busy day. But it did feel like super hectic as soon as it was like time to open the gates and like everybody came in. Because all of a sudden there was just a ton of people in the park. So that was interesting. It felt a lot more busy than Disney did. And we actually, at one point, we were checking wait times at Disney because wait times at Universal were like, they were all over 100 minutes. Like for all of the big rides, it was all over 100 minutes. And at one point, we walked by, it was like a Dr. Seuss like people mover. Like it was like if the people mover was Dr. Seuss, it would have been this ride. And we walked by that and we saw that it was 80 minutes. And we were like, are you serious? This ride is has an 80-minute wait. And they were like, oh yeah. And it's like, are you serious? Like this was supposed to be down season for these parks. And granted it was a Saturday. So it's like, you do always have to take that into account. But still, like if that's and it was cold, and it was like that was the coldest day that we had there. It was around like at one point it was like 49 degrees out. So it was very, very cold. We were freezing the entire time. And that just didn't deter anybody. Like people were showing up and the lines were long, and there was, unless you paid. So at Universal, you have to pay to skip the lines. And I think we didn't do it. But I think it's just like you pay and then you just get to like use the fast lane. So that's interesting. We didn't do that. So we ended up waiting in like the normal line everywhere. And it was just like, we didn't experience that like really even a little bit at Disney. Like we experienced it at some spots, but at no point in our Disney vacation did we ever wait like over an hour, and we ended up waiting like 120 minutes for like a couple rides. So that was interesting. So there's my first big Universal rant. But yeah, so all of that put together, like I mean, Harry Potter Land is definitely in its own league when it comes to Universal. But then like really like the rest of the park is just like pretty average, like almost Six Flags average. And that's saying a lot. So yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it. We really wouldn't go back anytime soon based on the experience that we had. And I don't know, it's really like if something big from Harry Potter comes out, then maybe we'd go back, but we just don't really see the draw of going back and experiencing that again, and really spending that much money for everything that we did.
And you guys didn't really do a whole lot in the rest of the park, right? You just pretty much hit the Harry Potter stuff and got out.
Correct. I kind of wanted to, and honestly, that did take a good amount of the day. We ended up leaving around like 6:30 or 7. And like that was us leaving early. Like we didn't leave that early at any of the Disney parks. We were also freezing. But I did want to kind of hit. They have like a Jurassic Park area. It's not really a land. It's kind of more of like an area. It's a lot more fleshed out than it used to be, which I thought was kind of cool. But I think we had like food there at one point, and then like left just because like that's all we could really do. So there's more to do in that area, the Jurassic Park area. But then really like we spent a lot of our time in the Harry Potter Land area. Just because and just to clarify, the big reason we went was because of Harry Potter Land. We're both huge Harry Potter fans. We love Harry Potter. And so if you are a Harry Potter fan, and you want to experience this stuff, by all means, like buy tickets, go and enjoy yourself, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Especially if you're a huge Harry Potter fan. But the hard part is swallowing the fact that you paid like over $200 for these park hoppers, and like the rest of these parks are like average at best. So that's really hard to kind of like grapple with. But yeah, we spent a large majority of our time at Harry Potter Land.
I have an affinity for Universal, as in they're good competition. to Disney. So I have not been there since 1994. I'm aging myself by telling you that I was in high school then. I had a great time. I remember it being not that crowded. Again, it was 1994, so there weren't crowds then, from what I understand, even at Disney. So I remember we could pretty much just go on whatever we wanted to, and it was fun being in high school with my buddies, just kind of being like, let's go here. Okay, let's go there. And I don't remember a ton. I do remember Back to the Future had just opened, and it was like the state of the art, go check it out type of ride, which I thought it was kind of cool. So history wise, Disney was actually courting Joe Rowling to get the Harry Potter stuff, and they were butting heads because, as we know in the history of Disney, they want control. That goes back to losing Oswald and the creation of Mickey Mouse when that happened, and they crave having that control. Joe Rowling also wanted the control. So she wanted too much, or much more than Disney was willing to give up. She wanted to be able to tell them how they're going to do it. Now, I think that when you have a creator like a Joe Rowling saying, I want to be involved, you might want to have that person involved. But Disney likes their control, so things fell apart. So here's Universal. At that time, they could not keep an average of 1,000 people in their park per day. That's how poorly they were struggling. That's how much they were close to closing. They could not keep that park running. Had Disney been able to find a way to get Harry Potter, I think Universal would not be around anymore. There's no question. So anyway, they basically said, whatever you want, you can have it. So she got all the control she wanted. They built Harry Potter. There is a guy by the name of Jason Sorrell. If you go out and he was a Disney Imagineer. He's written a really great book on Haunted Mansion, the history of Haunted Mansion. He's written one about Pirates of the Caribbean and also the mountain rides through Disney. Great guy. I've seen some interviews with him, and really smart guy. And he left for Universal at about this time and helped them build Harry Potter. So that's how we got to where we are now. If I could just interject a little bit more with Avatar Land over in Animal Kingdom, they kind of gave James Cameron a little bit of control when they brought in Pandora. So they kind of learned a lesson there. And I think we can all appreciate that, because if you are a fan of Avatar, you can definitely see the returns they're getting within that land. I'm fully impressed with that. So back to Universal. I do appreciate having them. I think they pushed the bar, and that made Disney have to change their game a little bit. And that's why we're getting something like Star Wars and Avatar. And even the way that Toy Story has been built, I think that's had some influence from Harry Potter as well. So, while I say I don't really care for Universal, I do appreciate having them in competition, because us, the fans, are winning. Now, I have not been to Universal since 1994. Why is that? Well, you kind of discussed it already. It's $200 a ticket, and I don't see a reason for me to spend more than a day there when all I'm really interested in is the Harry Potter. The reviews I constantly see is that Harry Potter is the only thing worth seeing. Everything else is, as you've said, is average. That also makes it really difficult. Finally, unfortunately, I do not have the body type that fits on most of those rides at Universal. So I'm going to be standing on the sideline, waving at everyone go by. That's not a lot of fun for $200. So when people complain about pricing at Disney, I get upset because nobody says a word about what Universal is doing, and they cost more. Universal has been charging more, or charging for Express Pass for how long? And it's $100 a day. And Disney is getting killed over $15. I think they're just catching up is all it is. There's a lot of other places now that have started because Disney has allowed it to start. I think them keeping it free has had maybe kept some of the other parks at bay, but Universal's been doing it forever. So why are we not upset with them? I'll get off my soapbox and off of this tangent, but I'm hoping that as we go through this discussion, Mykhailo is going to give me some reason to go, but so far I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, and part of that I think is just because I've made up my mind that, like, I don't know if I need to go back anytime soon. It would be nice to be able to, like, pair a Universal vacation with a Disney vacation. And I was almost like toying with that. Like, yeah, every time I go to Disney, like, maybe I can like pop over to Universal. And it's like, at this point now, like, I don't think I need to. But that being said, some of the positives, we've been talking a lot about the negatives, the positives. I do think that the rides that Universal has crammed into itself are pretty decent. They are kind of on top of each other, which Disney doesn't have that going on. Really kind of like each ride is thought out well of like where it is, and like it has its own like little area and everything. At Universal, it's like they're like right up on each other. The only place it doesn't feel like that is Harry Potter Land, and I think it's because it was thought up, like thought out a little better than the rest of the park. Like it was really kind of like methodically like put out there.
And really, Universal doesn't have the room like Disney does. You know, Universal came along after Disney had already moved in and just kind of bought the land that they could. And so they don't have the luxury of land like Disney does. In case in point, the only reason they have Volcano Bay is because they bought the old Wet and Wild water park and rebranded it. That's the struggle they have. They need to use the land they have. They can't just say, hey, we're going to use this chunk of land now.
Yeah. And so that's one thing I have to say is that most of these rides, and there were also rides that I didn't ride that I was excited to be able to ride, and we just ended up either not having time or just quitting on our day because it was so cold. But that's one thing that I have to say is that there are some pretty decent rides there, and rides that if I was attending this theme park, I'd be pretty excited to ride. One of them that comes to mind is the Mummy roller coaster. That roller coaster is really great, mainly because it kind of blends a high-speed roller coaster. It's almost like Rock and Roller Coaster if Rock and Roller Coaster had a dark ride in the front. Because basically what it does is it's a roller coaster that kind of like pulls you through this dark ride area at first, and then it's got a launch, and then you launch into this like roller coaster section. Which is pretty cool. I took a friend down there once when we went, and he wasn't a roller coaster fan, and I had never been on it, and we didn't realize that like it's a legit roller coaster on the back end of it, and he loved it. And he was kind of like his first like soiree into the world of roller coasters. He's not a huge coaster fan now, but like he enjoyed that and he was happy with it. And it was very cool that it blends that like dark ride and roller coaster. Rip Ride Rocket. I again didn't get to ride it, and that's one roller coaster that I've never ridden before. But my sister says great things about it, and it's kind of cool because you can select a soundtrack when you go on that roller coaster. So like you can select different soundtracks, like if you go on multiple times. Another fun roller coaster that they have is the Hulk, which is actually, it's an older roller coaster, but it's got this really fun slingshot at the very beginning, and you basically like slingshot up a hill and then you come down. We didn't ride that while we were there, but I've ridden that before and it's a lot of fun. Other fun rides that aren't Harry Potter. I mean, some of the Dr. Seuss rides are like fun and whimsical. I know Kristen was excited to do those, but they were like 80-minute waits, so we weren't going to do that. But those all look fun and whimsical, and like there's a whole like Whoville, like Dr. Seuss area. But it all kind of looks a little run down. Like it really hasn't been taken care of much, but like it's fun and whimsical. And so if you have kids will love that. They do have a Marvel section. I don't think we walked through it at all because we just kept using the train to go back and forth from park to park. We didn't walk through that area at all. But they do have that Marvel-ish area. It's almost like a magazine area or something like that. But they have Marvel characters and that's cool. I think one of the biggest rides that isn't in Harry Potter Land is the Jurassic Park ride. It's like based on raptors, and we didn't ride it because it was like almost like a 2-hour wait for that.
And that's Velocicoaster. It just
Velocicoaster,
opened,
yeah.
what, over the summer, I think?
Yeah. It's still pretty new. But I mean, that roller coaster looks insane. we were over by there at one point, and like the coaster itself looks pretty intense. So
it's gotten some good reviews. So.
Yeah. So those are some of the rides that aren't in Harry Potter Land. Also, something that we noticed, and I think it was because of the cold, but like most of the stuff, like as soon as we were in the park and actually like throughout the day, a lot of the roller coasters and stuff, they were all delayed, which we didn't really have. And delayed is like the Universal lingo for it being down. And so like we really didn't, I mean, there was that one time with Test Track, but like we really didn't run into that all that much at Disney. I don't even think while we were there, I don't think Slinky Dog went down. And like, I think that's the first time that I've ever been there and Slinky Dog hadn't gone down at all that day. So that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, that could have been because of the cold, but also like that could just be Universal right now. We'll never know. But yeah, those were the rides that were not Harry Potter based. And I mean, there's a lot of them that are very cool and very fun. I would put them up against certain rides at Disney, of course, because I mean, really, it's 1-to-1 with these parks. Like, it's not Six Flags, but I mean, parts of it feel like a Six Flags. But try to be positive. The rides at Harry Potter are really next level to like all of the other rides besides like Velocicoaster and probably the Mummy. They're just like next level to a lot of the other stuff that's at the park. Hagrid's, we already kind of talked about that, but that's a really great roller coaster. Probably the best roller coaster at the park. But I haven't ridden Velocicoaster yet, so I can't say that. But there's just some really cool tech happening there, and the idea is really cool. It's actually really fun. You literally sit in a motorbike. There's a motorbike, and then there's a sidecar. And I let Kristen sit on the motorbike because I'm a good boyfriend. And I sat in the sidecar. Sidecar was still very fun. But it was a cool train that they had. Cool riding instruments. So it was very fun. They had a lot of really cool tech at one point. I think Disney has this in Rise of the Resistance, but the whole track dropped at one point. I thought that was very cool. I'm pretty sure Rise actually has that. But yeah, the whole thing dropped. We weren't even ready for it. And so that was really fun. But yeah, that ride was really cool. The Harry Potter Forbidden Journey, actually, Kristen really enjoyed this ride. I've ridden it before several times. So I am less wowed by it, but it's again got some really cool tech. There's some really cool things going on and a lot of really great imagery on that ride. And so and it's basically, just to kind of explain it, you're just on an arm. Like there's an arm holding you, and you're in this like contraption thing, and it's just moving you around from like scene to scene, and like implementing you into the scene, which is ingenious, because a lot of times, like when you're going through these like Disney dark rides, like you feel like you're going through the scene, but this ride actually like brings you to the scene and like puts you right up against like spiders and like right up against Dementors and stuff like that. So that's really cool. But then the last ride, which was what do they call it? The Gringotts ride. It's like the Gringotts. I forgot what it's called. Escape from Gringotts. And I really enjoyed that one, mainly because I love that scene in the movies. But it's a roller coaster basically that kind of takes you around Gringotts and like brings you through like escaping Gringotts with Harry and the gang. And in the movies, it's one of those typical scenes where it's like you watch the movie and you're like, that should be a ride, and they literally made it. One of the ones that sticks in my head, and it's a Disney movie, is the water slide from George of the Jungle. I would always watch that and be like, they need to make this a ride. But yeah, it's one of those things where it looked like it would be fun in the movie, and then they made it fun in a ride. So that's awesome. That's amazing. There are several times Disney has done this, like the Millennium Falcon, making that a ride. That's amazing. But I don't know. This was kind of like the perfect melding of like me watching it in a movie and being like, that needs to be a ride, and then they made it. So that's very cool. So I think that was my favorite ride that we rode that day. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Flight of the Hippogriff. However, it's very much like a small coaster. It's like a barnstormer. And it's, I don't know, there's a cool animatronic in it. There's a buckbeak animatronic that you see. You can actually see the back of it really well in the queue. But I mean, it's nothing to write home about. It's a barnstormer. It's literally a barnstormer. It's like that same kind of like roller coaster size for being a barnstormer.
Is it as short as the Barnstormer?
It's short. Yeah, it's very short. So I mean, yeah, it's literally the Barnstormer clone over at Universal. But the last thing that you can really ride that's technically a ride is the train, because it is a means of conveyance. However, it's also got LED screens, so it looks like you're actually like leaving King's Cross and like you're going to Hogwarts. So I thought that was very cool. And of course, there's peril and there's Dementors that get on the train, and you can see the Dementors in the actual door has an LED screen in it too. So you see people walk up to the door. Like Ron and Harry and Hermione are over by there too. The girl that fell in love with Ron draws a heart on the door, and then Dementors come and they freeze the door and everything. So all of that stuff happens. It's all very cool. It's all very fun. But yeah, those are the rides. Just like those rides are head and shoulders over a lot of the other rides that are in the park. Spare for a couple. And even the roller coasters that I've ridden at Universal, I wouldn't put over some of these rides. And there are roller coasters at Disney that I would put over some rides, other rides at Disney that I think are better than Universal rides. So it's not even that like I prefer dark ride, like your typical Disney dark rides over coasters, because Universal is coaster heavy. Definitely coaster heavy. But that's the thing, is that like, I mean, coasters are fun. And if it's a fun coaster, like, of course, like I'm going to enjoy it. But just like the detail that's put into a bunch of these rides and the things that you can do on them are just really next level. So there's your pitch for reasons to go to Universal. There are definitely 100% reasons to go to Universal. And there are reasons to go back. I just wouldn't do it. I'm just not clamoring to go back right now, just because of the experience that I had. But yeah, I think now is a probably good time to start doing Disney versus Universal. And I guess one of the big things I wanted to talk about, Brian, was the consistency through Disney. There are some areas of the parks, I can't really think of a lot, but there are some areas of these parks that are kind of subpar. There are some rides at Disney that are kind of subpar, but I feel like the big difference between Disney and Universal is the consistency. And Disney is kind of ever changing. We know that. We live that. We know that that's Walt's mantra. That's always been what Walt wanted. Disney is ever changing. They're always updating things. I honestly don't think that's what Universal does. I don't think Universal has ever really gone through giant changes except for when they put in Harry Potter Land. But consistency is definitely something to point at for both these parks.
That's interesting. That's not something that I've heard before. Like you said, Disney does work at being consistent. And when you look at Universal, and I'm trying to think back to when I was there, I don't remember there being specific lands or areas. It was just kind of, here's the Ghostbusters ride, over there is Back to the Future. And I know, from watching some videos, that they do have areas now that seem to be themed. I'm thinking of the Blues Brothers area. And I mean, Harry Potter is all one giant tied together thing, but could you tell me now, is there a flow to it? Like when you go through Magic Kingdom, you go either forward in time or backward in time, depending on which direction you're doing the circle, right? So there is a continuity through the park. And I think you get some of that in every park that Disney has. What about in Universal?
Yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head. It's at Universal there, I think, and I think you really have to think about it. You have to think hard about the areas that you're in. But really, honestly, Universal is just kind of like, here's this. And and nothing really has like a big theme to it. It's just kind of like stuff is scattered around, and it's kind of funny. There are pockets. There are pockets at these parks that are themed extremely well. Harry Potter definitely is like at the very top. Springfield is themed very well. I think we just kind of like walked past it at one point. We didn't kind of like walk in and peruse Springfield, but I know watching Tim Tracker videos and stuff like that, that area is themed really well. And we can even talk about like single rides in areas being themed really well. The show building that Minions is in looks exactly like Groot's house. It's hilarious. it's really fun. But that's the thing, is that like it doesn't all flow together. There's like no story kind of tying everything together other than in these individual lands, doing air quotes that they have. But yeah, it's very much kind of like, here's this, also this is over here too. And it's really hard to kind of like have any sort of continuity to what's happening in each area. So it's, I mean, and that's what's sad, is that Disney takes the cake on a lot of that. And this is kind of why I've said that there are certain areas of Universal that feels like a Six Flags, because that's kind of how Six Flags is it's very much kind of like, here's your next roller coaster. That roller coaster's over there too. This is also a roller coaster right here, and we've put another roller coaster over there. And so it's like, that's kind of how it feels. It's like here's your Minions ride. Here's your race through New York ride. Want me ride? Oh yeah, that's down that way. So it's like the whole area doesn't flow, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, like why certain things are where. I'm sure there is, and you kind of have to think about it a little hard. But yeah, I think that's the big difference between the two parks, is just when Disney was built, there was thought put into everything. And I feel like when Universal was built, it was kind of like, let's throw a bunch of cool rides out here.
Disney World in particular is the second park, their second chance at it. And they've had all their experiences that they had with Disneyland to build upon. And I guess I'm speaking mostly to Magic Kingdom right now, but when you think about the rest of the parks that they've built, it's kind of the same thing. Now, if we focus in on Hollywood Studios itself, it does there are areas where it's like studios, right? Like, here's Frozen, here's Little Mermaid, here's the Muppets. Oh, and if you walk through this tunnel, now you're in Star Wars land. But like, those areas are themed together, and it sounds like Universal. Like, I'm considering the area by Indiana Jones, and like Frozen, and you have the ABC commissary in there, and like, that is like old world studio, right? Like, that's how Hollywood Studios originally was just kind of throwing things out. And I think maybe Disney picked up on it a little quicker, or Universal was just too far gone to be able to pivot. But we're getting into this more immersive. We're getting into this immersive experience that is what people are wanting. Like, they want to be immersed. They want to feel like they're a part of it now. And that's where Hollywood Studios is headed, is into that more immersive experience. And Universal, and this is probably going back to the lack of land they have, but I think if we think, and this is me just speculating now, but if we think about their history, Harry Potter saved their butts. And coming from that and having the growth they've had since then, they're still kind of moving that park maybe into more of a, okay, here's this area, here's this themed area, and we're going to immerse you in that. And they haven't been able to fully realize how that's going to look yet. It's an interesting dynamic that they have. I find that to be something off-putting. If I'm going to walk in, I want to feel like there's something, and maybe that's the Disney in me, right? Like that's how I've been trained now. I want to feel like I'm a part of it, or at least that the story is flowing for me. And if it's random, and I think that's a lot of the knock on Dino Land, right? Like it just feels like you're in a park. You're like it's not immersive like you would want. I will defend it and tell you the story over and over again, but I can see the argument as to why it needs to go and why people don't like it as well. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in Universal, and hopefully they're pivoting from that. Again, I want to see the competition because us as the consumer are winning. We are absolutely winning when these two people are fighting, these two businesses are fighting or competing with each other. So I'm hoping that Universal is heading that direction and will continue to push the envelope.
But I mean, and I totally get that. And in no way am I saying Universal is bad. Like you may listen to everything that we've said and they're like, oh, they hate Universal. They think Universal is bad. It's not as good as Disney. You're right. It's not as good as Disney. But there are areas where it's pretty darn close. And there are also areas where it's like, this is a completely different thing. Like this is a completely different type of experience than something I can do at Disney. Now, is the whole park worth it? I wouldn't say so. Not just yet. But that's the thing, is that like I 100% would go back and experience what I experienced, and then hopefully be able to experience more, maybe when it's a better day out. But that's the thing, is that like by no means are we saying, or even like I'm saying, that Universal is bad. Universal is actually very, very good. And there are definitely people out there who love it and very much enjoy it. I just think that, again, yeah, like they're kind of behind on updating their parks. I kind of mentioned it a little bit, but I feel like Disney, and this is kind of like a good and bad thing, Brian, because we do kind of get annoyed by like, oh, this ride is getting refurbished, like while we're here, or like this all of Epcot is under construction. It's Walcott now, and stuff like that. But it's like, yo, we're getting a completely new Epcot. Like, be happy about that. I think that's awesome. Epcot is my favorite park, and so like I'm super psyched about that. Like, that's gonna be awesome. I just don't think Universal's done enough of that. And maybe a little bit of that is that they've been paying more attention to, like opening these other areas, kind of like letting themselves sprawl out. Volcano Bay was big in there. The water park, is the water park called Volcano Bay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Volcano Bay. Yeah.
The water park is Volcano Bay. They opened up a bunch of new hotels. The hotels there are actually really great. We were able to stay at the Sapphire Falls Hotel, so that it was a really nice hotel compared to going from the All Stars. So that was pretty cool. However, I mean, we can talk about that too. Maybe that's an episode comparing a stay at Sapphire Falls to a stay at a Disney resort. There were parts of the Disney resort I still very much enjoyed over Sapphire Falls. but like that's the thing is they have all these other things kind of going on. So I feel like maybe that took away from updating and maintaining and making their parks better. And you were right. They did kind of like box themselves into a corner in the way that they initially did their park. Whereas Disney had the money to say, okay, we're moving away from the way we just did this. Because they're Disney, they've got the money to do it. So I think that's kind of what's going on with those parks. Do I want to see them do better and have all these amazing areas? Of course. If they can, honestly, I was kind of excited when I saw that the Jurassic Park land was getting a little more fleshed out. I thought that was very cool. There's more to do there than we did. There's a lot more to do there than we were able to do. So that's very cool. So hopefully that is kind of like bleeding into the rest of the park. But there's a lot of park there, and there's a lot of park there to update. So it might take a while, but that's the thing is that the areas that they have updated and the areas that they have created are top notch. Like they're definitely up there. So I guess take it with a grain of salt, the things that we say, because and definitely don't read into us saying that Universal is bad. But that's kind of where we're sitting with Disney and Universal is that, and I may be talking for you, Brian, but we kind of have this idea that Universal kind of has to do a little bit of catch up, but they're doing it. They're making their strides. They're coming out with some amazing experiences. I guess just consistency is all what I would like to see from Universal.
And just to finish that up, the last thought I have is, Disney has always been the leader in customer service. And it was interesting in the past year or so, as people have been going to Universal more and there's been more interest in Universal, we've seen a lot of the prominent Disney bloggers starting to cover Universal more. And I found it very interesting that those vloggers were going into Universal to get the experiences to bring back to their listeners and telling us how terrible the service was, telling us about how bad things could be there, which is not what I expected. I expected them to go in and say, here's what you can do. These things are really cool. Check out these restaurants, blah, blah, blah. I did not expect to hear they've got issues from some of these people. And I have not heard that from the public. I have heard the things that we talked about as far as what you experience. But I have not heard customer service issues. And maybe in the last few months that's been cleaned up. I don't know. I mean, they're going through the same struggles as the rest of the nation as far as hiring people. Who knows what is really going on? I don't hear a lot of the customer service issues now, so I'm assuming that a lot of that is getting cleaned up and is getting better. So they have their things to do, and again, I'm pulling for them because I want that competition. So I would encourage anyone to go out there. I think if you guys have been, I would love to do a trip report with you guys on Universal. So just send us that email, Miles from Main Street Podcast @gmail.com. It would be wonderful to hear from you guys. We'd love to talk some more Universal with you, hear your experiences, hear what you guys are enjoying out there. As Mykhailo said, we may have been a little bit negative here, but we want to hear the positives too. So tell us how we're wrong. don't have a trip report, but you still want to tell us off, come on out to our socials. Let us know. We've got a community, but we've also got the Facebook page. We're on Instagram and on Twitter. You can find all that information within the show notes. I got easy links in there now for everybody, so you can just go in there and click on your favorite social media platform, and it'll take you right there. So please come on out and join the conversation out there. It would be wonderful to talk to everybody.
Yeah, like and subscribe. That's what we want you guys to do. Like and subscribe. We definitely have more content coming out. We're probably going to be able to incorporate Universal into a lot of what we're talking. So if you're interested in Universal, keep listening because we're going to talk about more. So yeah, thought this was a pretty decent episode. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, it went well. I think this is good stuff. I've been leery to talk Universal, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I always have fun with my buddy Brian. But as we say, some live close
and others don't.
So let's talk about it. We'll see you next time on Miles from Main Street.